All right.
Oh,
Thank you, everybody, for being on the call today. We are very excited to have a very special guest with us for our Millionaire Mindset call, and that is Vija Williams. Vija comes to us out of the Seattle area, and she is best known for really getting in and jumping in and exploding her business over the last couple of years. And so, just a couple of things to know about her. Via's team is the number one real estate team in the Eastside KW office in the Seattle area. They're in the top 1% out of 140,000 realtors in KW worldwide. She's a KW Maps coach and teacher, and she was recently featured on the Zillow National Conference panel. She was featured on panels at Inman this last month and also at Mega Agent Camp and Family Reunion. So, with that, Via, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
thank you. That makes me sound like really good.
You are really good. And
Smoke and mirrors.
well, we know that we all start somewhere, and we're really impressed by what you've been doing with your team and your business. So we're excited to have you on the call with us today. So if you can tell us where are you guys primarily located, and how long have you been in business?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, my name's Via, and for those of you who see me on Facebook and whatnot, it is pronounced Via, like via satellite. Let's just start there. It's hard to look at my name with the J and like make your mouth say Via and not say the J, but it's true. It's like Tonya, with a J. We are located, so our hub is in Kirkland, Washington, and Kirkland, Washington is a suburb literally like 10 minutes away from Seattle. Seattle's kind of like Dallas or like LA, where you say, oh, I'm from Seattle, but there's like 20 cities. Okay, where in Seattle? Oh, I'm from Bellevue.
Hmm.
And so I'm a native here. I'm actually a fifth generation Washingtonian. And in fact, my dad's team is the number one team in our office. Their team builder, Keller Williams, if you guys ever troll the top 10 list, which I do, and just try to aspire to be those guys, you'll see my dad's team is typically a top 10 team at Keller Williams. So they have to take the cake. We are the number one resale team. They only do new construction, so I should clarify that. We I was an individual agent for quite a few years at a local regional brokerage called John L. Scott. And when the downturn happened, and I was kind of on the verge of losing our house, very stressful time for me and my family.
Wow.
I made a bunch of, oh yeah, I mean,
But tell me,
that could
real
be the
quick.
talk.
So at the bottom of the market, so you're an individual agent with another brokerage, and
Correct.
you're literally in the process of losing your house. I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge. What was
And
that like at
yeah,
that point?
and to be honest with you, I had a newborn baby. So there's more to that story. I have three kids, and I had a newborn baby, and it was a horribly, we got to the point, the lowest point we got was 6 months behind on our mortgage, which, as you guys know, is the breaking point
Right.
for and I want to preface it by saying we are still in our house. So I want to preface it by saying the story has a good ending. But I also, I was at a point where my back was against the wall, and I was either going to have to curl in fetal position or put my battle armor on.
Right.
And so my husband and I decided that. So with that, I made a whole bunch of bold moves because when you have nothing to lose like that, you just make bold moves. There's no reason not to. So I left John L. Scott and I came to Keller Williams, and that was 6 years ago, November. So it's been just years and 2 months. And the day I joined, I started calling myself a luxury agent, and I joined the Keller Williams luxury division, and I didn't have the money to do it, so they put me on a payment plan. And because I just thought the market had just gone to hell in a handbasket, and there was just no way to go but up, and I just felt like it was a time to completely redefine myself.
Yeah.
So I did, and I jumped in for the next few years, and I sold about 10 million in real estate, just working 24/7, doing what you all know. You all know what that's like when you're just at a point where you're like, you want to go see a house? I'm happy to drive 2 hours away and show you that house, and
Yeah.
open houses 2 to 3 days a week. You know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I did that, and then about a year in, I kind of scraped the money together to go to a family reunion, and it was the one in Orlando, and I was so broke. I had to stay in the Red Roof Inn and have a roommate to stay there. I mean, I couldn't even afford to stay in like a nice hotel,
Hmm.
and my world was rocked. I was like, wait, like teams? What?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
when did this happen? And how can you have a team to sell real estate? What the what? I mean, I just was,
You were doing everything as an individual at that point. And what year was
yeah.
that you went to the family reunion? Was that in
So
2012?
so that was 2012.
Okay.
And then I just that year, so between 2012 and 13, Seychelle, which might be about when I started to get to know you,
Hmm.
I traveled, I think I counted 16 or 17 times to go to Recruit Select, Family Reunion, Mega Camp, you name it, right? Just anything I could do because I kind of felt like I was getting my master's degree. I knew nothing,
Hmm.
nothing whatsoever about teams and frankly about growing a business. And so, I kind of I had like a year of training under my belt and
Yeah.
kind of was like, I'm ready to go, man. I'm going to start a team. And so I started the team
Okay.
at the beginning of 2013. And it was just an epic failure. I talk about this a lot. There's a video on YouTube you guys can watch when I talk about all my failures on that. But and basically I totally screwed up. And by the end of 2013, nobody I had hired was left. I had gone through 4 assistants that year and just epic failure. My hairdresser still won't buy a house from me because I stuck her with like one of the agents from that year. It was a disaster. So we're like at October, November of 2013, and you would think, I mean, it sounds like it's pretty dire. Sounds like I'd be pretty defeated. And I looked down and realized we were going to sell 25 million that year. I went from 9.6 the year prior to 25.5. So I was like, oh my gosh, if I can do this in like massive epic failure,
Right.
what on earth does success look like? And that's really when I learned, the power of leverage and that even not the best leverage
Right.
is it's more than it's more than a group of people together can do so much more than one, right?
So what I'm hearing is, so even though it was really messy in 2013 and you're trying to figure out how to hire, so you're trying to learn, you're going to Recruit Select, now known as Career Visioning, you're trying to figure out how to hire your admin, you're failing forward, it sounds like, through a bunch of different people, not quite ever getting the right fit. Even through all of that, you're finding that by having help of any kind,
Yeah,
it allowed you to basically 2.5 times your business.
yeah, in one year. Yeah.
So talk to me about that. I'm going to move to your org chart here for a second, so everybody can see. So talk to me about what
Well,
that looked like.
yeah. Okay, so because I'm seeing some chats about order of hire. First of all, I want you guys to know I go through all of this in detail. I will send, say, a link of a YouTube talk I did for Zillow in October in Vegas, where I outline everything super specifically. I
Okay.
don't know how much time we'll have today, but it's all out there. I'm super
Okay.
open about this stuff. But here's what I do want to share with you. Say that is my org chart now.
Mm-hmm.
That was not my org chart then. When I started, in fact, that leads me into like if there's one thing I want you to hear, it's what I'm about to say. For all of you guys who are maybe relating to this a little bit, or at least it's like time for you, you kind of are feeling that inside of you that it's kind of like time to go big or go home, and you're kind of at that point where you're like, I really want to grow this thing. I
Yeah.
have my best advice for you I'm about to give you. But what I want to say is that this org chart stemmed from the advice I'm about to give you, and it was different back then. Because when I first started, my order of hire was admin first always, and then I was the listing agent, and then I hired a couple buyer's agents, and so it would have gone 3 columns. It would have gone buyer side, admin, and then seller side.
So
Now, what my org chart is lead gen, admin, and sales. And
okay,
then under sales, does that make sense?
you're saying if you could go back and do it all over again, you would hire someone to help you with lead gen first.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, here's my big advice. Okay, this is probably the one thing, like if you were going to actually take an actionable step from this webinar, and I feel so passionately about it that
Mhm.
it's why I do these webinars because it changed my life. It was like, October, November that year, and I'm not going to pretend that we always had happy clients that year. That was my year of we were treading, it was ugly. It was ugly at times, right? I have one bad Zillow review out of like 104, and it's from that period. I mean, we had more business than we can handle. I'm going through admins, and I took a moment and I paused. And at Seth Campbell's urging, I took the time to write my MVVBP. And what that stands for is mission, vision, value, beliefs, and perspectives. And if you guys are like me, you're probably already checking your phones because that sounds super boring. And you're probably thinking, okay, I just want to know, how are you getting listings? Like, what's your lead gen? I totally get it. That's how I was. And I am telling you, once I actually paused a hot moment and took the time to define, what I wanted to build, it was like, oh my God, then now I know who I need to hire, and that changed everything. And so the VIA group started December of 2013, actually, with my first hire after that MVP was done in November.
Wow.
And so
you feel like once you really got clear on who you were as an organization, it made a big difference as far as the people then that you started attracting to that organization.
It was everything. It gave me the direction I needed. I was just willy-nilly like hiring people. Like, can you fog a mirror and, do you have a real estate license? You're hired. I mean, maybe I had to like them. But.
Yeah, can you share with us what maybe some of the things that are in your mission, vision, values, and beliefs?
Yeah, and again, it's evolved. And so that's the other thing. I think sometimes we put this pressure on ourselves, like we can't do something unless it's going to be perfect. Right. And I want you to give yourself permission to throw something down. You guys, it's been 3 years, and my last edit was 2 months ago in red. So it's kind of like a living document. I hand it out to the team every so often, and it's really coming, like, it's totally different now than it was then, But the big thing with our mission is well, I'll tell you what our mission statement is. It's to provide superior real estate services that clients want to hire and refer, that brokers and employees want to come work for, and that the agent community wants to work with. And so what happened is I realized that my passion was actually not selling real estate. My passion was in creating careers for people. And that's still where my passion is today. And so the org chart had to change, because when I got clarity on that, a few months in, it was, I think, April or May of 2014, after I'd hired my first buyer's agent, I sat him down and I said, I think you guys need to work buyers and sellers. I want to create an amazing career for you, and I want you to stay with me. And it just doesn't feel in alignment with the MVVBP to just say you can only work with buyers. It's VIA and 1,000 helpers. I didn't want that model.
Right.
And so all of my agents work with buyers and sellers. They only get buyer leads from the team, but they can self-procure any sellers. The listing specialist gets all the seller leads from the team.
Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I touch on that then. So agents on your team can do buyer and seller, but majority of your team members are buyer's agents. They're only getting buyer leads, but if they happen to procure a listing lead, they can list that themselves. But any inbound listing leads go to your listing specialist.
That is correct.
Okay, got it.
So that's why I made that comment about the org chart, because that org chart looks like it does now, because we are so in alignment with our MVVBP. I mean, we screw up a lot.
Sure.
We fail forward a lot, but I just kind of wanted to share that, that MVVBP, it's just one of those things. I think a lot of us doers and high level executors, we just automatically want to skip over that stuff that doesn't sound like it's actionable or anything.
Got it.
And pausing for just a hot moment to do it, change everything for me anyway.
Got it. And so now with your org chart, the way it looks, talk to us about how you're currently doing it. Because what I see on your org chart is actually not a placeholder for a million salespeople dominating your org chart, but actually a lot of back end support, and then that happens to have the sales team as a part of it too. So talk to me about this.
Yeah. We're growing a massive team, and we, as Seychelle knows, we grew a little too fast last year. And paid the price for that, and so we've reeled it in a little bit. So what it looks like now is we have
real quick, just so they see that, like, you grew at a massive pace from basically what was it? 48
We
million,
went from like
9 million.
25 to 37 to 48 to about 70. It was like 69 last year.
Right.
And for us, that's about 120, I think it was 128 units. So it's not a high unit count. Our average listings, something like 550, and our average buyer is right around 500, and that's by design. That's purposeful.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you go back to your org chart, but I just wanted them to see when you say like hot mess of a year, they understand what those numbers look like. Okay.
I would say it's less production, more that we went from 3 agents to 12, and we weren't ready for it.
Wow.
And we're now at 8, and much more methodically building. And so the agent count will be massive. And I have a 10-year plan, and there's hundreds. But this year we really want 20 to 24 by the end of the year. Whereas I actually thought we were going to hit that last year.
Got it. So
Yeah.
you're still on the path that you want to go. You may just be a little bit slowed down in the progress towards the goal. So
yeah, our goals are unwavering. Our tactics change.
absolutely, absolutely. So you have this great organization that you're growing and a massive sales team that you're building. Talk to me about lead sources. What's your number one lead source?
Yeah, so our number one lead source is sphere of influence. And, when I say that, I'm grouping together current clients, past clients, friends, database, family, all of those are kind of grouped together. And that's about 50% of our business. And that's also my agents. So whenever you come on to, our team, by day one, you need to bring a database of 200 plus people with you. And we expect our agents at 50% that they're generating 50% of their business. We all know that the really good agents do that. So the team is at about 50%, and then it's agent referrals and internet. And it's interesting because internet, I think we did about 15% of our business was internet, which is lower than the year previous, but we really increased our unit count. And when I was looking at the numbers a few weeks ago, I realized we're doing a lot better with referrals because we've kind of implemented the promise by Mike Hicks, who you should have him on. He's great. And so what's happening is by percentage, our internet as a lead source has gone down, but the number of transactions has gone up, if that makes sense.
Yep, that does make sense. And just since you're saying your sphere of influence is your number one lead source, is there anything special that you do? Can you give this promise script that you guys are using, since you gave Mike Hicks an awesome shout out? And then can you also let us know if there's anything you're doing to cultivate business from your database during the year?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing I'll tell you about database is that everybody's pretty good about, like, you're bringing them their keys and you're at the closing table, or right around there, and you're asking for the referral. I think at this point we can all assume we're at that level. But what we all have to remember is that our clients talk about their real estate transaction during. Way more than they do afterwards. So you need to start asking for that referral. The biggest thing we implemented is way early on, like at the consult, and that's what the Mike Hicks promise is. And it's basically, our commitment to you is we're going to exceed your expectations, and we're going to do such an amazing job for you that by the end of this transaction, you're going to essentially replace yourself, and you're going to, give us the name and number of a friend or family or coworker who is, going to buy or sell. And you start planting that seed at the very initial meeting, and you drop it in, and it's really important to have your transaction have your admin who has communication with your client, that they're involved in that too. And we find that we have found that since we started doing that, we're getting more referrals during the process. It's not like 6 months later, because they've kind of forgotten about it.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And then since you mentioned that you had agent-to-agent referrals and internet as your second and third, is there anything special about those two that would be helpful for teams or agents on the call to be implementing for their business for those sources?
Yeah, I can share a challenge, which I don't know how positive that is, but
that's good.
I have to say, for those of you guys who you're the rainmaker and you're not doing the majority of the production anymore, it has been surprisingly challenging, and we're still really struggling with it, to get to get a system in place for internet lead conversion. It is really easy for me to tell you, okay, we have a French fry rule. McDonald's tosses their French fries in 5 minutes if they're not fresh. So we have to call them within 5 minutes. That's easy. Our team does that. The question is, there's about 1,000 protocols and steps that kind of need to happen. 10 days of paying. What does that look like? What if you're in your car? We have 8 agents. We're going to 20. What system are we using? How are we doling out the leads? It has been really challenging for us. And I would urge you guys at the beginning of your growth to start tackling that. I should have started tackling it sooner. It's just more challenging than I thought.
I think that's very fair. So, in tackling systems, and I'm not going to make you go like super, super in depth into it, but, you're hiring a lot of people for your sales team. And I know Denise Harper on the call was asking, do you have a process or criteria for hiring sales agents?
I would love to answer that, Denise. Let's finish the question, but it's a great question.
Go ahead. Yeah. Do you have a process or criteria for hiring sales agents?
Yeah. And so again, I'm just being totally transparent with you guys. I'm not like towing any party lines. We really do use RS and now CV, but it's a modified version. I would be not truthful if I told you we did the full. Not at the volume we're hiring. So we're using the KPA where we have a superset process right now where we do a phone screen and then we do an in-person. And what we do in lieu of the group interview that Career Visioning teaches, what we have started doing is we invite them to watch the team lead gen and to join us at our team meeting. Our team meetings are every Monday, noon to 1:30. And they come. The team is not allowed to edit themselves. They have to totally be themselves. And we started to train the team. Our goal is that each team member gets a quick convo with the prospect, with the potential hire. And my team weighs into me later. And I'm telling you, we have passed on someone since we started. We started this about 3 months ago, the whole team meeting thing. And it is the best thing we've ever done because they know exactly what they're getting into.
Yes.
Nothing sugar-coated. They're watching the agents on the phone. They're watching the agents get hung up on. Yep. They're watching it, and they're watching the agents with smiles on their face saying, I love this, and coming into the team meeting, and we do these stupid things like we do like victory laps and high fives to Justin Timberlake whenever we get a closing. And they're watching that and they're kind of deciding, can I live with this or not, Yeah. And, thankfully so far so good. But the other thing is that before I decided to really grow the team from an agent growth count, what I did, I created an 8-week, it is kind of an 8-week, but an 8-step module. So we don't, instead of a first 100 days, what we have is an 8-week module that's rolling. So it's like lead generation 1 and 2, and then listings 1 and 2, and then buyers 1 and 2. And basically by the end of the 8 weeks, and it's just been rolling. So when people start, sometimes they jump in on sellers week 2, or whatever. We do trainings Tuesdays and Thursdays 1 to 3. It's usually by me if I'm there. And then I have a brown bag unplugged for the team Wednesdays noon to 1. And then we always do trainings in our team meetings. So it's really training intensive. And they have to, present their listing presentation, to a group on the team, video. Our goal for our agents is to simulate stress and anxiety, which sounds funny, when they're doing their buyer consult and their listing presentation, because we feel that it's stressful and anxiety ridden when you start meeting with clients.
Yes.
And we want them to have that with us first. I often will have agents say, the client was easy, Via. Like having you there was tough.
Right. Right.
And I kind of want that. So we're really good. I would say that's probably one of our biggest our strengths. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, just on the topic of people coming on board, do you do accountability meetings or 411s with your team?
Yeah. So, and I mean, not to keep telling you about all these videos, but I do have a great video on what my 411 looks like on KW Connect, because we have a Google Drive 411. So we just share it with each other. And so everybody does 1-3-5s and they do their one thing for the year exercise and 411s. I'm a really big believer in that. All of the team get really quick weekly 20-minute meetings. And then about once a month, we'll do hour-long meetings where we're really going over the 411s. We don't do 411 meetings weekly. It's just not realistic for the pace that we're growing.
Right.
But if they need me, and that's kind of what Wednesday 12 to 1 is, like if they need me or if they're struggling with something, that there's enough accessibility, they'll just call me anyway. But it's really only about once a month that we really do a deep dive into their productivity at that level.
Would
But
you
every week we're touching base on their pipeline management.
got it? So once a week, you're going over current business and reviewing their 411 that they're personally uploading. So there's some, I mean, I think it's important to have some team member accountability in that too.
Mhm.
And then they're doing
Sure.
sit down once a month with you on that. And then another
Yeah,
question on your lead gen, is every person on your team required to lead gen, or is it
yeah,
your sales team? Okay. So
yeah. No, these
admin
are great,
too?
super great questions. No, no, you're right. Admin doesn't lead gen. No. And so 9 to 11 is lead gen time in the sales office. I want you to know that we didn't used to be that way, that it's been a big year of turning that big, huge ship, in this
Yeah.
direction. And we have a big team power up Mondays at 8:30 that I lead, and then the rest of the week they just do their own script practice and mini power up 8:30 to 9, and then it's lead gen 9 to 11. The goal is 20 conversations a day, 100 a week. We require our sales agents to take 1 weekday off per week because I just don't want anybody to be burnt out. We work too hard, in this. And open houses are a big. They're doing a lot of open houses and working on the weekends, and typically a first-year agent on our team anyway is going to be more buyer heavy, which just means they're working a lot nights and weekends. And so we want them to lead gen in the office a minimum of 3 days a week. And so that means that leaves about 1 day a week that they can lead gen from home, and then a day a week that they would be off.
Okay. And then, let's say Via that I'm lucky enough to be an agent on your team and that you might consider hiring me. And let's say that I am falling behind on my lead gen. What happens with that?
Well, so every week we're going through pipeline management, and for us, every single lead has a tag: A123, B123, or C123. So
Okay.
an A buyer or seller is going to buy or sell within 30 days. B is 30 to 90 days. C is nurtures, 90 plus days. And then 1 means they have a signed buyer agreement or listing agreement to work with you. A 2 means they're probably going to work with you. There's nothing signed. And then a 3 means you're kind of hoping. So every week we're going through their pipeline management, and we have target goals. I just know my numbers here, and I know about how many A's they need to hit their goal, about how many B's, and about how many C's. And so we can briefly, in 2 minutes or less, determine, for instance, sometimes people have a ton of A's and then no B's. Everybody kind of has a lot of C's because we have leads coming out of our ears. And so a lot of the time I'm like, and we know what lead sources get us A, B's, or C's.
Right.
So a lot of the times, these agents who are slammed and busy, I'll be like, well, you're falling behind on your lead gen because I can see you've got way too many A's. So are you utilizing a showing agent? And you can't stop doing open houses. That's our strongest B source. And as busy as you feel, you're going to have no business when you run through these. And so we can kind of look at their pipeline and sort of gauge what's happening. And usually I can see the pain point. When an agent has a ton of A's and is about to burst with a bunch of business, they do start missing their lead gen, and I'm often jumping in, and I feel like sometimes like Rocky's coach or trainer, I'm like, push through it. You got to push through it.
Yeah.
You have to make yourself lead gen. You have to control that schedule. The day starts at 11:01. I mean, it's like Rocky's trainer is standing beside him when he's at the punching bag,
Yeah.
So yeah.
One thing you mentioned, which every market is different, but I think it would be great to hear is, can you share with us your gut check on how many A's, B's, or C's your agency to have in their pipeline to hit the numbers that you want them to hit?
Yeah. And we're still not only are we showing no signs of shifting, if you guys look at any, market ratings in the US, I mean, Kay Schiller, Seattle's #1 for appreciation right now. Like we're not going to shift for a while. So for us, our biggest problem with buyers, which I don't know if you guys are experiencing, maybe you are, is there's just not enough inventory for them.
Right.
So in this particular market, we really need 10 to 15 A's, about a dozen A's to really probably hit the goal. Most of my agents have a 2 to 4 unit a month goal.
Okay.
And you have to remember, in my market, my top agent netted, so she personally made $175,000 last year, And that was probably how many? 32 units.
Wow.
Sorry, earpiece went out. Are you there?
Yep, we're here.
Sorry. And so, so we just know based on our metrics that it's about a dozen A's, and then you want to double it, give or take, for B's. So whatever your metrics are, this still holds true. And then you want to double that and then some for C's, and you want to max out as close to 100 as possible. I just don't think one agent can work with much more than 100-ish people in their Boomtown account. So we use Boomtown, which is a CRM. And so when they're running low or kind of sifting through, they shop in our client care account. We have like 7,000 leads, and we just have a method about it. So, I mean, a perfect pipeline would be about 12 A's. That would be beautiful. 20-ish B's, 24 B's, and 40 to 50 plus C's. That would be a beautiful pipeline. The fact is, getting 12 A's is a major. If you think about that, that's a lot of people, and it didn't used to be that high. But we're just in a market where you can have a bunch of people sitting there for months waiting for that house now.
Mm-hmm. So, and we're in a very similar market here. Our price point for some of us on the call is a little different. So there are some people on the call that are also in luxury markets. But so I think we all have decided we're moving to Seattle for your price point. But that's really great. So, Renee, we're going to repeat in writing for A, B's, and C's. So, A's are
okay. A, B, and C. The letter is the buyer or seller's time frame.
Yep.
The numbers are their commitment to you, right?
Yep.
So A is now,
Yep.
0 to 30. B is 30 to 90, and then C is 90 plus. Another word for C is nurture. And then 1 means that they have either a listing agreement signed or a buyer, we call them buyer loyalty agreement signed.
Uh-huh.
A 2 is, they're working with you. It's, for whatever reason, you don't have one signed. It happens all the time. You're showing your bestie a house and you just haven't had them, like they're working with you.
Right.
And then a 3 is you're genuinely not sure. Like maybe the first showing an internet lead is going to be an A3. You know that they're motivated to buy now, but you don't know if they're yours, right? That's an A3.
Right.
And as an example, we really don't have C1s. It'd be very rare to have a C1 unless we reclassified them along the way.
Yeah, so it's very rare that someone's going to be 6 months out or 90 plus days out and
sign
be
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just to go back on those numbers, an ideal pipeline would be somebody that has 12 A's, 20 to 20 B's, and 40 to 50 B's. And so
correct.
Elizabeth had asked the question on accountability. If you're seeing an agent fall off the horn on either their pipeline or on their lead gen, is there some sort of probation or some sort of a measurement that you have to be able to hold them accountable down the road, or is it start with a conversation and move forward from there? What does that look like?
Great. That's a great question. And I bet you the person who asked that has a team right now. So the fact of the matter is that this isn't a punishment. This is their life. Their goals are my goals. That's how this works. And so, if I see someone super talented and we're hitting a glitch, I want to keep them. I want to retain them. And so it's not to me about punishing. It's about what's going on. Mm-hmm. So let me give you an example. When my agents come in on their very first day, I give them a little speech. And part of that speech is you build your business on nurtures. That's a Tim Heil quote that I use, all the time. And I go, let's talk about that. If a nurture is 90 days out, your first 90 days are going to be rough. They're going to be rough. You are going to, potentially luck out. We want everybody to have one deal in their first 90 days. But you have to remember, you guys, we're in a market, very low unit count here. Mm-hmm. So for us to get that one $500,000 deal, I would venture to guess is just as challenging to get 2 or 3. We're in a very competitive, tough market here.
Right.
So, what I tell them is that, how do you get B's? Well, your C's turn into B's because you nurture them. How do you get A's? Your B's turn into A's. And then we go into all of the lead gen activities that feed us. Okay, so, for instance, B's really come from open houses here. What we have found is by the time they're A's in this market, they have agents. Mm-hmm. So the trick is, and usually it's C's, they're not quite going to open houses yet. So they know that when they go to open houses and lead gen, they're going to get B's. So what'll happen, Seychelle, in answer to your question, a lot of the time, they'll all start seeing they have 15 Bs and 40 or 50 Cs and like one A that's not that's falling through, right? And they're all discouraged. And I look at that and go, this is healthier than my number one agent right now who has 15 A's. You know why? Because the more B's I can see in here, the healthier this is for the year. So then I can look at him and say, you have got to just trust me and continue the activity. If you continue the lead gen and the follow-up and the 9 to 11 and the 100, conversations a week, you need to trust me that these B's are going to move up and you're going to start breaking through this. But if I see that they don't and they just have C's and it's 90 days in, and by then I've probably already started realizing that they may not be cut out for this, we might start having some real conversations about, is this what you want to do? And, I'm here if you are, but do you like this? So, so usually there's more going on than just, I don't know if punishing or chastising. What we reward on, though, is the leading activity, is the activity itself. So if someone's not hitting their goals, but they're not showing up for lead gen, then they don't get any leads. That's the punishment. We don't invest in them.
Got it.
So
that makes Thank you for that. And then a couple of lead gen questions for you while you're on lead gen. Who does your OSA call?
Yeah, so we do have an OSA. Thanks for asking. And she calls expireds, FSBOs. FSBOs have started to turn into a really big focus for us. So FSBOs, expireds, and then there's a couple online seller leads that we have. Circle prospecting. She does door knocking Fridays with my listing specialist. They love it. Gets her out of the office, and they circle, prospect, door knock, whatever hot listing we happen to have. And with all of that combined, she started in May, and I'm really finally starting to see awesome ROI from that position. And the synergy with her and the listing specialist. So it's taken us a while to kind of get that down.
That makes sense. And then where are you pulling your data for when they're circle prospecting?
So when she's calling, it's cold directory.
Okay.
And then when they're door knocking, they're just door knocking.
Got it. And then when you're door knocking, are you combining that with an open house or anything like that? Or just?
Yeah, so no, they're not always combined. No. Sometimes they're doing it with a just listed. Well, no, sometimes they're doing it with like a pending sale. Like if we've had multiple offers for the next few Fridays, they'll go door knock the neighborhood, because you guys all know, like, the neighbors love to know about their neighbor's house that sold with 15 offers,
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have so much fun at that, because like they're kind of like the town hero.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, and so Vija, you've been so gracious and willing to share with us. I'm going to let us go for about 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we're going to cut off because I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I had 2 other questions. Angela Hornberg wanted to know that for your agents that list homes, do their splits change for listings?
Great question.
And then the second part of that I'll go ahead and give you so you can answer it at the same time is, do you carry their listing fees and management for them to ensure like the standards are associated with your brand, or are they able to kind of run rogue with their own management?
No, it's awesome. These are awesome questions. Again, I can tell you guys have teams by the caliber of your questions.
Yeah,
they're really,
absolutely.
Yeah, super high level. Like a lot of times when I do these, it's like, what? Like, how do you do this?
No, we have an incredible group of agents.
Super high level questions.
So, yeah, they're all high producers on the call.
We have a couple different splits. The quick answer is 50% on buyers, and you're absolutely right. They get 45% on listings. It's slightly lower, so because it's just a little more expensive. Now, let's talk about the second part of that question. This is where you have to define what your team looks like. Is that mine? Oh, weird. For my team, our admin, our transaction coordinator, and listing coordinator, she's one and the same person, pretty much yanks the file from your hand and doesn't let you touch it again, which means they have no management control over anything. We are very centrally, we are highly protective of our customer service and our brand and our marketing. Nothing. We are like an ironclad, we're like strong government. It's really strong centralized government. They don't have a lot of control at all. What Megan does is she talks to the client directly, and she sort of takes it over a little bit, and then she'll say to the agent, hey, call your client, tell them we're having, I mean, she'll tell them when to make contact, and they're certainly chatting and talking with their client.
Sure.
They do their negotiations for both the price and the inspections, but Megan's really driving the ship. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome. And then last question, and then we'll let it be a wrap. What does your day look like now?
Oh God. So from 9 to 11, so my days, I try to get in the office between 8 and 8:30, and then 8:30 to 9, I'm just checking in on everybody. I want them to see my face. I made that mistake last year. I had a massively, epically failing year last year, really screwed up. And so this year, I'm very engaged and making sure they know I'm engaged. So I want them to see my face. I'm checking in with everybody. I want them to know I'm in at 8:30 when they're not, frankly. And then 9 to 11, I am doing a combination of lead gen, lead follow-up. I still do a little bit of production. And for me, that's my recruiting time. My real lead gen right now is recruiting. So that's happening between 9 and 11. I have now started moving into the sales office to do it alongside them. I think it's been really good modeling for them. And plus, I can kind of coach them in real time. I've changed a lot of scripts so far this year that way, where I'm like, "Ooh, Teresa, that's not sounding good. I would hang up on you." So, so let's do this. Let's try this. And she just told me yesterday she got a listing appointment and a buyer consult from that tweet, which is great.
Awesome.
And then I am basically in wall-to-wall meetings for the rest of the day, either with agents or recruits or with sellers. Again, I'm in a little bit of production, or I'm supporting my sales agents and I'm going on meetings with them. Mm-hmm. And I hardly can see straight. It's been so busy and overwhelming.
And then,
but it's good. I wouldn't.
If there's one thing you want somebody to remember when they're referring you business up in Seattle, because we all know that now Via gets all of
yes.
What's the one thing they can make sure that they're saying to their clients when they're talking about you?
Well, I mean that we have a complete and utter demand of the market. Many of our agents are natives, including myself, and we're really known in the agent community, and we know our stuff. Just as an example, the first 2 weeks a new agent comes on the Via group, they have to preview 50 homes their first 2 weeks. Previewing is a part of their job, and everybody knows their product. We have a whole inventory of off-market inventory, and we really, really take care of our clients. We're stellar. Megan and the whole crew, our customer service has just been superb, and that's what having a team does, right?
It is. It absolutely is. Well, Via, this has been phenomenal. I think you can see the reviews coming in on the chat, but thank you so much.
I didn't have my glasses on. I can't read any of them.
No, you've been great, and thank you for being so transparency and so open. I so appreciate everything that you gave to us today in our region. We're so appreciative, and a big shout out to our region, and thanks to them for helping to put this on.
Yes.
Send your referrals to Via in Seattle, and everybody, thanks for being on. You'll have a great day.
Thank you so much, you guys. All right, go sell. Build those teams. All right. Bye.